Now let's meet the candidates. Former Senator Rick Santorum, businessman Herman Cain, Congressman Ron Paul, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, former Utah Governor John Huntsman, and former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. Joining me at the desk tonight, my Fox News colleague and anchor of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace, and from the Washington Examiner, Byron York and Susan Ferruccio. We're gathered tonight at a very unsettling moment for Americans. We've watched the stock market on a wild roller coaster ride this week as people are anxiously tracking their balances in their retirement accounts and college funds. About 14 million people don't have a job tonight, and millions more have given up looking or have taken part-time work to try to scrape by. The nation's credit rating was downgraded for the first time in history as we try to get a handle on the country's skyrocketing debt. And just last weekend in Afghanistan, more American lives were lost than on any other day in this decade-long conflict. So tonight, we are respectfully asking you, the candidates, to try to put aside the talking points, to try to put aside the polished lines that get applause on the campaign trail here in Iowa and around the country, and to level with the American people, to speak from the heart about how you would navigate this country through the challenges America faces. So let's begin. Congresswoman Bachmann, you say you can turn the economy around within 1 quarter by cutting taxes, reducing spending, and repealing the health care law. In fact, this week you said, quote, "It isn't that difficult," and, quote, "solutions aren't that tough to figure out." Isn't it unrealistic to suggest that something as massive and complex as the U.S. economy can rebound in just 3 months?
We can start to see recovery within 3 months, not the whole recovery, but we can begin to see it if we put into place what we know to be true. Number one, we should not have increased the debt ceiling. In the last 2 months, I was leading on the issue of not increasing the debt ceiling. That turned out to be the right answer. And this is part of the movement that we're seeing all across the country. I've been leading that movement. I've been giving it voice. And it's not just Republicans. It's disaffected Democrats, it's independents, it's libertarians, all coming together, apolitical people, because 2 days from now, Brett, we get to send a message to Barack Obama, and the message is this: you are finished in 2012, and you will be a one-term president.
Governor Romney, Congresswoman Bachmann says she can start to turn the economy around in 3 months. How long would it take you?
Well, I'm not going to give you an exact time frame, but I can tell you this, that if you spend your life in the private sector and you understand how jobs come and how they go, you understand that what President Obama has done is the exact opposite of what the economy needed to be done. Almost every action he took made it harder for entrepreneurs to build businesses, for banks to make loans, for businesses to hire and to build more capital. What needs to be done, there are really 7 things that come to mind. One is to make sure our corporate tax rates are competitive with other nations. Number 2 is to make sure that our regulations and bureaucracy works not just for the bureaucrats in Washington, but for the businesses that are trying to grow. Number 3 is to have trade policies that work for us, not just for our opponents. Number 4 is to have an energy policy that gets us energy secure. Number 5 is to have the rule of law. 6 great institutions that build human capital, because capitalism is also about people, not just capital and physical goods. And number 7 is to have a government that doesn't spend more money than it takes in, and I'll do it.
Governor Romney, you mentioned leadership on the economy. You are the front runner in this GOP field. Yet when it came to weighing in on the debt ceiling deal in Congress, something that had a major impact on the economy, many on this stage say you were missing in action. Some columnists even said you were in the Witness Protection Program. Then just hours before the House voted, you released a statement saying you could not support the bill. Is that leadership?
You know, this is a critical issue, which is how big is the government going to be? Back in the days of John F. Kennedy, the federal government took up, along with the state and local governments, 27% of the economy. Today, government consumes 37% of the economy. We're inches away from no longer having a free economy. And so this is a critical issue, and therefore, well before the debate got pushed along, I signed a pledge saying I would not raise the debt ceiling unless we had cut, cap, and balance. And that is the view I took on June 30th, and I reiterated that throughout the process, and frankly, all the way to the very end.
Just so everyone knows, when candidates go over the allotted time, they've agreed to this system, that's what you hear, the bell, and we'll try to not ring the bell that much. It's not the doorbell. So to be clear, and just to be clear here, you echoed Congresswoman Bachmann and Congressman Paul in being against that final compromise deal. So to phrase it another way, if you were president, you would have vetoed that bill?
Look, I'm not going to eat Barack Obama's dog food, all right? What he served up was not what I would have done if I'd have been president of the United States.
I know, but that bill was the deal on the table, Governor.
If I'd have been, well, I'm not president now, though I'd like to have been. If I were president, what I would have done is cut federal spending, capped federal spending as a percentage of the total economy, and then worked for a balanced budget amendment. If we do that, then we can rein back the scale of government, and that's the right thing to do. And that's what I said is that in June 30th.
Okay. Congressman Paul, as you know, when Standard & Poor's downgraded the country's credit rating last week, one of the reasons S&P listed was because of partisan gridlock in Washington. Congressman, what specific things would you do as president to increase growth, calm the markets, create jobs that could pass through a divided Congress?
Well, they didn't downgrade it mainly because they couldn't come to a conclusion. They couldn't come to a conclusion because they didn't know what was going on. The country's bankrupt and nobody wanted to admit it. And when you're bankrupt, you can't keep spending. And all these proposed cuts weren't cuts at all. What you have to do is restore sound money. You have to understand why you have a business cycle, why you have booms and busts. If you don't do that, there's no way you can solve these problems. And the booms and busts comes from a failed monetary system. The interest rates that are way lower than they should be encourages malinvestment and debt. And to get out of that, all this other tinkering, you cannot do that unless you liquidate debt. You don't bail out the people that are bankrupt and dump the debt on the people. That is what's happened. So you have to allow liquidation of debt, eliminate the malinvestment, then you go back and you can get growth again by having a better tax structure, lower taxes, invite capital back into this country, get a lot less regulations, and under those conditions you can have growth again.
And you can get it through a divided Congress.
Well, the divided Congress will exist for a long time to come. Yes, you would have to get it through a divided Congress. But the one thing is, if you approach it constitutionally, if you approach it on the principles of liberty, you can bring people together. If we have to cut, maybe we wouldn't be so determined that you can't cut one nickel out of the militarism around the world. Neither the Democrats or the Republicans want to cut that. So if you want to cut, you have to put the militarism on the table as well.
Mr. Kane, we know you have a 4-point economic plan, but what one specific thing would President Kane do first to restart the economic engine? And again, with the caveat, that one thing would have to get through a divided Congress.
Make the tax rates permanent. That's one of the 4-point plans, because the business sector is the economic engine. You have the group that's talking about spending, you have the group that's talking about cutting. I represent growth, and it starts with the business sector putting fuel in the engine. In addition to that one thing that you asked me to identify, we must have a maximum tax rate for corporations and individuals of 25%. Take the capital gains tax rate to 0, take the tax on repatriated profits to 0, make them permanent and certainty back into this economy, and I believe we can turn it around. And one other thing, we don't have an option to wait longer than 90 days. It is imperative that we get this economy going in 90 days with the next president of the United States of America.
Governor Huntsman, you told the New Hampshire union leader recently you intend to convene a, quote, council of business leaders to figure out what's needed to improve our economy. Governor, you've essentially been running for president for 3 months now. We checked your website. We were unable to find a detailed plan. In the middle of an economic crisis, shouldn't you already have a pretty detailed plan by now?
The plan you will find on our website. It is coming. We have been in the race only for a month and a half. But here's what I intend to do. I intend to do exactly what I did as governor of the state of Utah. We took a good state and we made it #1 in this country in terms of job creation. If you want to know what I'm going to do, I'm going to do exactly what I did as governor. It's called leadership. It's called looking at how the free market system works. It's creating a competitive environment that speaks to growth. We cut taxes historically. We didn't just cut them, we cut them historically. We created the most business-friendly environment in the entire country. We were the best managed state in the country. We maintained a AAA bond rating, all of the things this country so desperately needs. When you look at me and you ask, what is that guy going to do? Look at what I did as governor. That is exactly what I'm going to do, and it's exactly what this country needs right now. Speaker
Gingrich, some people on this stage have run big companies. Some have turned around companies. Some managed payrolls. What makes you more qualified than anyone else on this stage to create jobs and grow the economy?
You know, you've been asking about divided government. This coming Saturday is the 30th anniversary of Ronald Reagan signing the Kemp-Roth tax cut, which was done with divided government. I was part of that effort in the House where the Democrats were in control. He did it by going to the American people with clarity, creating a sense of urgency, bringing pressure to bear on the Democratic congressman, and building a bipartisan majority. That tax cut led to 7 years of growth, which in our current economy would be the equivalent of adding 25 million jobs, $4.4 trillion a year to the economy, and $800 billion in new federal revenue. A decade later, as Speaker of the House, we had divided government. We negotiated with Bill Clinton. He vetoed welfare reform twice. We passed it 3 times. He signed it the 3rd time. Largest entitlement reform of your lifetime. We passed the first tax cut in 16 years. The largest capital gains tax cut in history. Unemployment dropped to 4.2%. How would the country feel today at 4.2% unemployment? That's my credential.
Governor Pawlenty, you say your economic plan with tax cuts and spending caps would grow the economy by an average rate of 5% a year for 10 years, a rate that has never been achieved in 10 years in a row. With the last 2 quarters averaging less than 1% growth, and even some Republican budget analysts very skeptical, openly skeptical of that plan, is your proposal just pie in the sky?
Well, the United States of America needs a growth target, and it needs to be an aggressive and bold growth target. I don't want the United States growth target to be anemic or laggard like Barack Obama's. So is the bar high? Yeah. But do we need that growth to get out of this hole? You bet. And I hope people will go to our website and read that whole plan, because it's the most specific, comprehensive plan of any candidate in this race. But, Brett, there's another question here. Where's Barack Obama on these issues? You can't find his plans on some of the most pressing financial issues of our country. For example, where's Barack Obama's plan on Social Security reform, Medicare reform, Medicaid reform? In fact, I'll offer a prize tonight to anybody in this auditorium or anyone watching on television. If you can find Barack Obama's specific plan on any of those items, I will come to your house and cook you dinner. Or,
what do you think of that?
Or if you prefer, I'll come to your house and mow your lawn. But in case Mitt wins, I'm limited to 1 acre. 1 acre.
Oh. Governor, any response?
That's just fine.
Senator okay. Senator Santorum, nothing about your lawn, but Governor Pawlenty says America can quickly grow 5% a year for 10 years. With the right mix of policies. Is he right?
America has unbounded potential, and I think putting a limit on that potential, we've grown at faster rates than that. For me, it's been a focus on one thing as I've traveled to now 68 counties in the state of Iowa, 50 in the last 14 days, working and meeting with the people of Iowa, and I've been talking to them about what we're going to do to grow the manufacturing sector of this economy. When I grew up in Butler, Pennsylvania, a little steel town, 21% of the people of this country worked in manufacturing. It's now 9%. If you want to know where the middle of America went, it went to China, it went to Malaysia, it went to Indonesia. We need to bring it back. I put together a 4-point plan to do it, including energy, producing more energy, because, of course, manufacturers use more energy than just about everybody else in the business world. But the big thing I've proposed is to take the corporate rate, which makes us uncompetitive, particularly in exporting goods, take the corporate rate and cut it to 0 for manufacturers. You want to create opportunity for businesses and manufacturing to grow, cut that tax to 0, our jobs will come back.
Turning the economy around is the topic we've received the most emails, the most Facebook messages, the most tweets about. Of course, it's topping all of the polls. So finding specific solutions to the country's economic ills will be a recurring theme throughout the debate tonight.